All right, we are back. I'm going to go ahead and try to get some work done in another window of time I have. Whoops, I need to open the cover. I'm trying to fill some fertilizer, because that is what I have in here right now. And then I'm going to try to fertilize those fields. So in between, I have determined that the canola fields are actually ready for harvest, so it's too late to try to put herbicide on them to deal with the weeds. But if we go back here to the map, you can see the weeds are pretty prevalent in my fields, along with other farmers as well. The other thing I don't know that I've showed, which is nice, is with precision farming on a multiplayer map, or at least within these servers, we're able to see the other farmers' results as well, which is interesting, because if we then decide they put a field up for sale, if we kind of keep an eye out on things, we can see, what really happens, especially like, the yield maps here, where you can see clearly this field is very productive compared to some of the others. So it is nice that it's not just the ones that I've sampled that I can see. I can see all the others. So there is a bit of a lag that is happening on the server at this point in time. Sometimes that happens because it's a real-time process and I have the time that I have to get on. I muscle through it, so I'll apologize ahead of time if we've got a lot of hiccups, but it's kind of, it is what it is. So I don't have a choice, because this is a window I have and I want to make sure I get things done, and if I can do it in daylight, all the more better, because I can certainly probably get it done tonight, but it'll be dark on the server after 7 or 8 at night, which might be when I get to this otherwise, so we'll see. But do what we can, and we'll just piece it all together later. So the other thing that, actually this is not drawn too badly, and that's probably because I ran this tractor up before I included the recording. But a lot of times when you're driving around the map, things will fill in as you go, because the map's kind of refreshing. I think you've seen it on some of the other videos, but I was half expecting that to be going on, but we're not running into that right now, so maybe we're okay. Goodness. I am having a hard time keeping the tractor straight today. So yeah, we do have another FM on operating, and as I go and fertilize, I might point it out on the map, but it's Sears, who's up on the northwest corner of the map, so basically straight north of me at 97, 98 that we just came from. Although he's got that set of fields, 51 and 52, I believe, if I remember, are his as well, that we looked at with the great yield. So but he's here at this point, because yeah, if we pop up, I'm trying to see where I'm not seeing him on the map. Oh, there he is. So he's in field 41. Looks like he's eliminating some weeds. We were just talking about how often we needed to spray, so it's possible he's putting herbicide down on his fields. I didn't get to the point of asking him. Okay, so we are here. I am going to pull up mini-map so I can see things quickly here. So we've got the nitrogen going to... There we go. And so we should start seeing the map green up, or yellow up at least. But yeah, we've got some weed growth, and I'm assuming it'll get worse. So yeah, on this field, I am going to wait to try to spray any herbicide, as I'm still trying to test the theory about when the best time to apply is, because I'd really love to be able to find a way to do it once per crop cycle. And that was exactly what Sears and I were talking about. He wanted to know if we had to apply more than once, and I explained to him at this point I haven't found a way yet, but I've not given up yet, so. Alright. So I am going to try to line up. Actually, I should probably line up at the other end, or at least I'll get a long run. But the nice thing is the width on this spreader is quite good, as you can see. So unlike the planter, although the planter was pretty wide because I wasn't using my normal seeder. So I'm just gonna set up my line real quick. See where I'm at. I think I can move that over a bit. Alright. So we'll cycle back. This is a little bit of how I do it. May not be the best way to do it, but it's the best way I've found for me, and then I can do things. So I'm turning on the fertilizer spreader here, and you can see it's doing nothing right now, and then it kicks in at this point. So I hadn't used precision farming substantially prior to it being placed on the servers here at FSN, but I did start trying to learn it a little bit before it became live here so that I could understand it. But that was one of the biggest surprises I had, was that you could, that it would control the fertilization like that. I knew it changed the rate, but I thought it didn't stop the over-fertilization, where basically without precision farming, if you turn on your fertilizer or your spreader, it'll continue to spread regardless of where you're at. So we'll see how this all goes. I'm not sure here that I even really need a headland, although I do need to pay attention so that I don't waste fertilizer on the other field, because it will do that. Because as you can see, it, you know, it took a sample of the next field over, so if I run the fertilizer over, it will go ahead and do that. I'm not quite sure why this feels, to me it always feels a little bit slow, even though the seeding is normally slower, but I guess it's just because I think it should be able to go faster with fertilization, because all it's doing is throwing granules out, but obviously it's still limited to 11 to 12 miles an hour. You can see my wear on my fertilizer spreader is above 1/3, so I definitely need to make sure when we're done here that I repair it. Obviously I've missed that at least a couple times, although it might just be doing the canola fields, because there are 5 of them. So it could certainly get that high that quickly. So yeah, this map, if you've not used it before, I think what I read on it is it's based in Tifton County, which is in northwest Ohio, up by, if anybody's a roller coaster enthusiast or an amusement park enthusiast, I think is right up near Cedar Point, which is the roller coaster capital of the United States, I believe. I think they still hold that designation. We haven't been out there in several years and not really gotten out there as much as I'd like. But I do enjoy that park if you've never had a chance to visit. It is probably one of the best in the country, having been to several. Layout's great. Obviously the roller coaster selection is great. And there's other things, and if you're not a thrill seeker, there's still other things you can do. Alright, so this will be the last long run, and I can run it just along the grass, but sometimes I worry about, will I be in the trees? Because of the width of the spreader, sometimes it does go wider. But yeah, I'm still torn thinking about what do I do with this forested, grassy area. So it is on my property. In theory, I could expand the field. You can see on the mini-map, it would give me a substantial portion if I did it. Now, obviously, I'd have to keep part of it empty so that I could continue to put sheds on it for the bales from the harvest, but other than that, I could get more field, but once again, I don't really need more field. So I'm torn between my inner pull to maximize what I have, and therefore, hey, I've paid for this land, why would I let some of it just stay forest if I have the option? But the other tug of war on that side is I already take a lot more time than I have, and I'm definitely limited in the time I have available to do a lot more. Otherwise, I just literally will stop doing almost everything else I do for leisure and just live within FSN, which some people do, but not the reason I joined FSN. It was to be part of my entertainment when I have time, not all of it. So right now, that part of the tug of war is winning out. Aside from the fact that I can't do anything about it. I mean, I could plow that grass strip that was there by the trees and, basically expand it 10 to 20 meters, but that's not going to really change much, so I think I'll leave well enough alone. This isn't a small field by any stretch, and I think at a minimum I want to get through the harvest because, while again I've harvested corn and tobacco and hemp as a contractor, sometimes you think you're paying attention to how long something takes, but it's all very different when it's your own farm in your own specific time. I mean, I'm technically getting paid doing the work here, but getting paid doing the work here, but you don't always think of it the same way, where someone's, kind of paying you hourly to do work. You're like, oh, I'm getting paid. Where here, my pay is once I get through the entire harvest and get paid for the crop. And it's substantially more than I can make as a contractor, so I understand the logic in my head. But that's where human psychology gets entertaining, because sometimes things that are logical and should convince us don't. it's that pull for doing something different. So let's see. Right now I'm not turning off the spreader at all. I'm just turning and letting it do its thing. I've not really tried that, but it actually seems to work fine, and then I don't run the risk like I was with the planter of suddenly starting and hitting the button too late to start the fertilization going again, although it's a lot more forgiving than the planter was. You can kind of hit the turn on button and fertilization starts instantaneously versus the implement having to lower and then you're waiting for things to happen. Alright, so we're coming up on the end of this field. Again, I'm going to be collecting my data, which will likely not make the video, but alright, I'm back after another break that I needed to take. So we need to fertilize field 86, but coming back into FSN, a lot of times things disconnect on manual attach and you need to reattach, and sure enough, we've got the hoses have disconnected, so the fertilizer cart would not have worked. And we're getting some pretty bad lag. You can see the red milliseconds in the mini-map. So I'm going to wait here for a second. Alright, let's try it again. You can see how the field is updating as we go, so that's part of the slowness, because I haven't moved around yet, so as you go around fields, it will run into that type of thing. So let me start doing the headland here, and hopefully it won't be too bad. And then we still have to get the lime done, and then we'll see what else can happen, if anything. It's a bit of a challenging curve, but luckily the turning radius on this case is pretty good. Getting hit with the lag a bit. So yeah, I'm trying to make sure I don't let the fertilizer spill off the edge, otherwise or I should say come short of the edge, because otherwise I will have to go back and touch things up, which I'd prefer not to do, so I'd rather almost be a little too conservative. It's typically what I do, so that I can then quickly move around and do what I need. Alright, so looking pretty good so far. Pretty sure we'll be able to finish this without replenishing the fertilizer. Now the lime, that's going to be a completely different position. So again, I didn't turn off the spreader there, but because there was enough of an overlap, it determined there was no fertilizer needed. And so it shut it off for a second until I got into the unfertilized area again. It's a pretty good sized field, so maybe I will have a problem with the fertilizer, but we'll take a look and we'll see. And it's interesting here because obviously we are a bit different with the we have a different crop here because this field, if you remember, is tobacco. And in precision farming, we'll fertilize and spread nitrogen. Or, I'm sorry, fertilizer is spreading nitrogen, but spreading lime, which is the pH, differently depending on the crop, which is why I go ahead and plant before I do anything, because clearly there's a significantly different fertilization level, and therefore I may end up having a point where I do run short. So we'll have to see how everything plays out. Just trying to line up. Again, since I've been out, I lost the GPS, so I've got to reestablish that. Alright, so we're overlapping a bit, but that's okay. It should do some lower fertilization levels because of that overlap on the one part of the field. So, and I don't know that we're overlapping enough that we're then requiring an additional pass of the field or anything, so time-wise there shouldn't really be much of an impact. So yeah, it looks like probably want to go down into that little cutout of the field when I come down this way, because I'm basically covering almost the whole width of the forest here. Although, yeah, it looks like actually most of that in the cutout is already covered with the two passes, so I don't need to go down at all. So, good to see, and good to know. I was wondering if it actually picked it up, because it wasn't turning, but it was. You'll notice too on the field that it does appear at times to not have fertilized a spot, but I have found if you try to go back over it, it won't drop fertilization there, because it's considering it done, as you can tell from the mini-map. So that's partially why, at least at this point, I keep that up, so that I can tell what is happening. Might still have to do three segments. I don't know. Yeah, certainly. Now looking at the mini-map, it might even be 4. There's enough of a angle out on this field that it requires a little bit more coverage than I thought. And at this pace, we may need more fertilizer. A little bit of the challenge here talking live. Sometimes you get tongue-tied. So maybe we'll get lucky, but I'm not sure if we will or not. So I guess only time will tell. But it does seem like there's quite a bit left, so I'm thinking we're probably going to be just short. Because, yeah, we started at 500. We're already down to 300, and we might not even finish this pass. So this is taking a lot of fertilizer, but as you can tell on the precision farming map, we are going basically all the way to the top level is needed for tobacco, it looks like. So we'll get a little bit of this done, but we are going to need some more. Whoops, I turned it off, which doesn't help, but let's see how that all goes. There we go. So we are out. Alright, so... Bringing the seed auger down with fert makes no sense because we're basically needing just, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 at the most. So I'm going to go ahead and drive up because I will need the seed or the auger for, it is called the Seed Express, so let's use its proper name and then there will be less confusion. I will go ahead and fill that with lime and bring it down because I'm sure I'm going to need even more than one truckload of that. And so I definitely don't want to be driving the truck down and emptying it out and driving it back up, so. Yeah, I've been checking the price. I'm just remembering as I'm driving here. I've been checking the price of the bales in the direct sell market. Still haven't gotten above $200 per bale, which has kind of been the target I've set for myself when I'll finally go ahead and try to execute the bale contract. So when that happens, we'll be covering that, but I don't know when that will be. And if we get to the point where I determine, all right, I've waited long enough, I may go ahead and, sell it for less. So we'll see. The danger, of course, is, I've been holding out at 194 a bale or whatever and saying, hey, I want to wait a little bit more. Worst case scenario will be it never gets back up to that level again. And then I'll have lost even more trying to wait for a price that never came, and then that high never comes back again. So a little bit like playing the stock market to some degree, but I believe that's probably the reality that real farmers are facing when they're trying to determine when to sell their crops. So part of the simulation, certainly. So yeah, luckily the lag seems to have slowed down. You can see the poplars over on the left that, if they're not obvious by the uniformity and perfect line that they exist on, they are planted as a crop by the farmer there. But he's been waiting, I think 2 or 3 years at this point to get them to that point, and I think they take in seasons, 5 seasons to, or 5 years to fully mature, so I think he's still going to be waiting a little bit longer. So yeah, this field will fill in as it goes. Alright. So I am going to grab... I don't want lime. Not sure why it's telling me that. Oh, because I have a choice in this. Right, and I am going to... So one of the mods that we have within FSN is called the fill limiter, which I think is a mod available. I don't think it's unique. And you can basically restrict the fill level. So that way I'm not suddenly grabbing way too much and then having to offload it. So we'll go ahead and do that with the fertilizer, and then the way it's acting, I thought I was getting lag again, but it's not showing me that, so I'm not quite sure what's happening. But alright, we will head down, finish fertilizing, and then at that point I will run the truck up here to get lime, or half tempted to come back up here, although now I can't dump back into the silo from this implement anyway. So what I'll likely do is any fertilizer I have left I will offload onto a big bag on the field, and then when done at one point, because I'm sure I'll have to run back up with the truck to get more lime, and at that point I'll grab that fertilizer, put it in that Seed Express, and then unload it into the silo again, so that we don't leave things laying around on the map. That again is, you know, we talked about performance issues before. Pallets, bales, also cause performance issues on multiplayer servers, so those are also FSN rules that come into play here that we try to be mindful of and don't let things lay around too long. So there's definitely more, I don't know that there's more driving around in the FSN community as we do this, but there's certainly different decisions you would make, because once again, we might, in a single player, have built an auto drive path, and I may choose to send a vehicle up to 97 with a helper, and that's just not even an option here on the FSN servers. Trying to be careful to not take that turn too quickly, although yeah, I'm going to have to bounce through the ditch here the way I came in, which is fine, but it's always important to be aware of that, because you don't want to get hung up. Alright, so at this point I'll start where I was up here. I've got that little segment where I had mistakenly turned the spreader off that I need to catch, but I'll be able to leave it on the entire time. Whoops. So it obviously thought I was turned more in that direction than this direction. So we'll turn it on, and then it will turn itself off when it hits that segment again, and then we'll pick back up in the small piece there. And I'd be very surprised if the 2,000 won't be enough. Likely 1,000 will be enough, but I didn't want the situation where I'm short by 50 or something to happen, because that's pretty disruptive, and again, take more time. And you probably don't want to watch me drive up and down more than I need to, any more than I want to take the time to do that. Whoops. Yeah, I keep getting confused because I turned it on. I'm like, why is it going so slow? And then as I hit the button, I realized I just turned the spreader off again. But turned it on in time there to not worry about it. Alright, so I'm going to go empty this near the border of the fields, because I'm thinking it wouldn't be unheard of that we run out of lime before we even finish that first field. So let's take a educated wager here that I will need, or I will be right around here when I can then pick up the fertilizer and bring it back. So in the meantime, I can leave this here. Where did we leave our Seed Express? Was it around here? There it is. So I'll just run over, because it's hard enough to pick it on the mini-map when there's a lot of things. Alright, the hoses here are still connected. So like I said, it's something I'm in the habit of on the FSN servers, to always double check that, because a lot of times it will disconnect, and then obviously if your PTO or your hoses aren't connected, things don't operate as you expect. Oops. drifted off. I thought I had a straight line there, but misjudged again. So, good news is this will go faster. I can go ahead and place the seeds back in the silo, get the lime. So there's going to be a lot of shuffling here for a while. So I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of this set of jobs, so getting us through liming, on the time lapse, and we'll catch up at the very end.
There's nobody else better than me around. You know I'm the type to stand out in a crowd. You might be jealous, but I can't help it now. I'm like a diamond, can't stop me
Alright, so we've gone ahead, dropped off the leftover fertilizer or lime that we had, and speaking of the leftover fertilizer, you may not have noticed in the time lapse, but I had brought back about 1,700 fertilizer and forgot to empty it, and then went to fill the lime, and initially it looked like it wasn't filling, but it did convert the lime to fert, or the fert to lime. Man, I am just getting backwards here, and I'm trying to explain this. Which I'm not sure that I really like that conversion, because lime is significantly cheaper. So I basically tossed away a little bit of fertilization or fertilizer for lime, but that is what it is. But at this point, we've got these two fields ready. I still need to go ahead and bring this back home and park it. Once again, just kind of talking about FSN specific things. This is my field. I theoretically could leave it here if I wanted to. Nobody's going to have an issue with things being left in the field for a few days, as long as they're in my field. But I just tend to like to not then start the next job or the next task with things left not put away, which would be the same thing if I did hire a contractor on my farm and had them do work. I'd be pretty upset if I came back and found my equipment scattered all over the map, if I specifically had asked them to, please bring everything back, park it on the farm, and as we talked about, clean it up, repair it, and so forth. So fertilizer spreader's got about, looks like 37% wear on it. So I'm certainly going to pop in to my workshop space here, which is the rectangle on the ground, if you didn't notice that before. We didn't really use much fuel, so I'm not going to worry about that. Just need to get enough into this square to repair. Obviously the tractor's here, so I'll just go ahead and take care of it, but really just wanting to handle that. Whoops. So I tabbed is what I did, and now I'm in an FSN truck over at Customs. So that's the other thing with the multiplayer. I don't think that's unique to FSN. I think if you just have multiplayer equipment, you're going to hop around to other players' things that you have access to. And we do have access to FSN equipment, which really, as FMs on the server, what we would be using would be the things up at the shop, which would be the plow and the snow plow and things like that. So if we need to plow a field, an FSN field, we cannot use the FSN equipment to do work for ourselves, because obviously then we're taking advantage of wear and tear and all those other things instead of incurring them on our farm. But if we're doing FSN work, we are allowed to do that with FSN equipment, obviously, and not use our own. So, but we wouldn't be using the trucks, for example, because we are unable to do that in a way that's acceptable, and I'll explain that in a different meeting, or a different episode. Too much work today talking about meetings. But anyway, I will go ahead and at this point put this away somewhere. This is probably as good a place as any. I'm not expecting to have to plow fields anytime soon, so blocking this in won't usually result in me having to clean it up or move it to get to the plow anytime soon. Of course, as soon as I say that, I'll find out that I have to plow my field after cotton or something. I haven't really done that crop that often. Go ahead and disconnect everything so that once again I'm not attached, and then there's no surprises when I come back in here, and I'm ready to go ahead and work. So the last thing I want to show you guys one of the things we didn't really talk about is, why do I have these silos here for supply? And the reason is the shop is all the way on the other side of the map up here. So this is where the bins are, so we'll pop over here. So this is what they call the dry product stations. Again, these are I think I appeared inside the silo, so let me hop over into the shop and then head on out to the silos. So the dry station silos are also FSN specific on the maps, so they go ahead and place these, and basically this allows us to buy the supplies we need. And then again, the shop that we talked about, this is where things are delivered. This is an example of something. Someone bought a spotlight, but it's attached to the contractor farm. This has been here for years. I've kind of sent in a ticket to get that removed because none of us own it. But so you can see this is FSN owned equipment. So there's a snow plow. This is a geo that gets snow. So in the winter, we can issue snow plowing contracts, or again, plow if necessary the roads ourselves. We've got a telehandler, which normally really isn't used for anything quote unquote FSN specific. So that one is a little bit of a outlier, I guess, in that usually where I've seen that used on maps is somebody's rolled a vehicle, or usually a contractor who's less familiar with the map and in a hurry makes a mistake, rolls the vehicle, and you've got to use something to stand it back up. And obviously if you don't own a piece of equipment that can do that easily, it obviously doesn't make sense to lease or buy an piece of equipment just to fix a problem that wasn't necessarily one you caused. And then again, the tractor with the giant plow behind it, which I believe is the same plow I've actually purchased for my farm that we just backed the spreader in front of. But this is used, once again, before fields are sold, if they're not in a plowed state and ready to be taken over. Then the FSN plow is used to go ahead and do that. And again, as mayor, I'll put a contract out for that. If I don't want to do it, if I want to do it, I'll do it. If for some reason there's an FM who wants to do it, that's never happened. But if that were to happen, again, we can certainly do it, and we'll do it for free. But what we can't do, because normally if you're a contractor and you come in here, you would join the FSN farm. So when you're here, you would join this farm, and you'd be able to use the equipment. Because we're on this map, we're able to use it because I think they have a setup as contractors to FSN, so we can get in the equipment. But if we were to leave our farm to join another farm, we lose rights to our farm, and then it would take a ticket and operations to come in and basically set us up like they did on day one to get us on our farm. So that's one of the things we didn't talk about. As a farm manager, you stay in your farm. So I never go ahead and leave farm, where a contractor who comes and works for any of us would join our farm so that they could use our equipment, and then they leave our farm when they're done, and then we're taken care of. So since I'm going ahead and explaining some of the FSN uniqueness, let's jump back into those trucks I tabbed into by accident, or at least jump over into that area. So this is the custom silo. So the trucks that I had hopped into are down here. So there they are. And so those are FSN owned trucks. And this is the custom silo for FSN, which obviously is going to be unique to FarmSim Network. You're not going to find this in other multiplayer systems. So as you can see, I talked about 7.5 million liter capacity. There's some rye in here. So once again, as mayor, now that I've seen this, because I haven't delivered anything here when this was present before, if this ends up staying here for 4, 5, 6 days. I'm certainly going to start asking the FMs, hey, who's got the rye over at Customs, to just make sure, once again, we don't have something remaining. But because we're not allowed to use Customs as storage, in my example, for example, I think I've told you guys, I had 1.2 million in capacity in my silo that's over on field 97 right next door here. If I suddenly am harvesting and I'm running out of space, I can't suddenly say, hey, I'm just going to put the overflow into Customs and let it sit there. There's certainly a potential gray area if I know I'm immediately issuing contracts and I'm right at the end, and I've got a little bit more than a truckload, but I'm going to be issuing a direct sell and selling all that immediately. You can start filling the custom silo ahead of time, and for those few minutes or hours even, that's certainly acceptable. I mean, again, the rules aren't made to be restrictive and ridiculous. They're made to just make sure that people don't go against fair play and take advantage of things. So the intent would be more like if I wasn't going to sell my crop, like let's say this person isn't selling their rye that has this here, and they don't have space, but they don't want to lose it, so they don't want to leave it on the field to wither. They harvest it, and then if they can't store it here for 3 years until the price of rye gets to a point that they're ready to go. So that's the intent. But so where we really would never use the trucks, what the FSN trucks are for, and you can see there's a tanker and there's also trucks, because this silo will also hold. You can see milk is on the board and so forth. So we have a farmer with a dairy operation here. Everything you're moving outbound, on this end, outbound or inbound, and basically, there's an inbound customs, which is that ramp over there. I think on this side of the building it says, inbound customs. So that helps people figure out, okay, this is where I drop off, this is where I come to the silo master to pick up. So if we were to sell crops, let's just stick with what's here, but you'll see me do this in some future videos. So if you guys have had enough, feel free to cut this short, and I'll repeat a lot of this after harvest or once I'm at the point where I'm selling something. So it's possible with harvest this year, I'll just choose to store my crop until another time, another year. I've done that before where I haven't sold anything for 3 or 4 years. We'll see what happens. But let's say this rye was actually mine. I've gone ahead, I've brought everything over. I come here, look at the fill level, just so I know exactly how much is in Customs, and then we issue a Customs contract by selecting direct sell or send to warehouse, and basically say I have 125,949 rye on server 48, and I'm direct selling or I'm sending it to the warehouse. And what will then happen is another player will take that contract at some point, and they'll use these trucks over here to fulfill the contract. And what fulfilling the contract means is this rye needs to leave. It's being shipped to a warehouse, or it's being sold through direct sell. So in theory, what we understand there is, we're selling it to some production facility. So it'll be interesting to see with FS22 coming and the production capabilities in there, if the FSN rules on FS22 servers change in some way, and suddenly direct sell becomes something on the map. But I'm imagining we're still going to have the option to direct sell to basically, say, a production facility not on our map, which is in essence what we're recreating in the direct sell process. We're being offered a price. If we choose to accept it, we do that. But the mechanics of then how that gets executed here on the server is someone will come with an FSN truck and load those trucks up, and those trucks actually have 100,000 capacity, both the tanker and the other trucks. So they are modded vehicles for FSN. The other thing that I'll mention here, nothing on the map or nothing used in FSN is allowed to basically exceed or honestly even approach the capacity of the FSN vehicles. So those Lizard trailers, which I believe if you buy them and use them as from the Mod Hub, for example, I think the 2-trailer configuration I have would be 125,000 liters capacity. Here in FSN, the two together are 80,000. So they're actually smaller, even though they're the same units, because FSN Operations mods those so that they're below the capacity of the FSN trailers. The decision point, my understanding is in the formation of the community on that, was basically to, again, introduce a little bit more realism. There was a feeling with some of those huge capacities that that's not something you would find in the real world. And therefore, you have to take a few more trips. Obviously, what you'll likely see when I work on harvest next is we're going to have 400, 500, 600 plus thousand liters coming off these fields. Obviously, if I could do that with a 125,000 truck, even if I had 600,000, I can do it in 4 trips. Now with an 80,000 truck, it's going to take me basically 8 loads to do that. So about double in that case. And that's just, what it exists in the world of FSN. So just trying to share a little bit. But the trick is then they pick this up in the truck, and then as the contractor, they're allowed to take it to any sell point on the map and sell it. And that's how it basically, quote, leaves the map. We're just using in-game mechanics, but then the website's actually what's taking care of the transaction. And this will make a lot more sense when I actually execute one of these and do it, because I'll show you guys how that works, and you'll be able to see it. And more importantly, if you're thinking of joining FSN or you're thinking of participating with us here, you'll kind of have a video to refer back to, or likely a couple sets of videos, because more than likely I'll issue the contract. Nobody's going to pick it up immediately. It usually takes several hours. And then, it'll be the next video where I'll explain and show the back-end mechanics of what happened after that. But the reason we as farm managers on our own server cannot do this ourselves is if I was to grab that rye, put it in the truck, take it over here, you can see on the mini-map on the bottom right is St. Stephen's Auction House, which is just down the road, which is why this is a great map to do customs contracts on, because you're driving nowhere to a drop-off point, because again, you're not having to go to the one that's giving the most money. It doesn't matter. You go to the closest one, and on our map, we're one of the closest locations between customs and a sell point in FSN for the maps available in FSN. So we tend to have our contracts done pretty quickly on Seneca for that reason, because the people that play a while know that, hey, I can jump in, and even if someone's moving 600,000 and they have to run 6 loads with the customs truck to fulfill that, they can get that done in less than half an hour. And usually a customs contract is basically $1,000 a truck is what you're getting. So, in 30 minutes you can, as a contractor, earn 6,000, and since the going rate is 5,000 an hour for labor as a contractor, they pay pretty well, as you can tell. So if you can, especially if there's multiple of us on the server that are harvesting and issuing customs contracts the same day, which certainly can happen when it's late autumn and we're all deciding we're going to sell our crops off the map. You could find 5, 6, 7, 8 contracts, in an extreme case. I mean, more than likely you'll get 2 or 3, but still, if you do those in rapid succession, there have been times as a contractor that I've in essence made 20,000 an hour, which is 4 times the going rate that I could make as a contractor just working normally, because I've just been able to find a map that needed a lot of customs deliveries done. Or even if I can't find a single map, one thing I've done is I'll search for the Seneca servers, and I'll search for contracts on those, and customs and the sell points are in the exact same place on every map, of that type. So there's a dozen or more servers in FSN that are running Seneca. So I know where customs is, I know where the sell point is. So once again, as you learn it, just like an employee, just like a contractor and anything, you learn your local market, and you can be very, very efficient. So you can drive that up, and you can still get to 20,000 and do it on 4 different Seneca servers, and just do one customs contract on each that is the full 500,000 loads, which is what a contract's capped at. And you can make some good money pretty quickly. But because then when you're at the sell point and you're dumping the grain or you're dumping the milk, those funds would obviously then show up in my account here, where I have, let me move it a little bit so you can see it better, since it's in the white sky, but 637,655. I'd in essence be double dipping as a farm manager if I was allowed to fulfill my own customs contracts, because I can't leave my farm. I can use the FSN equipment. I would take it, I would sell it, the money from that sale in-game would show up in my account, and then the money from the direct sell, or what I got for the resource exchange after I sent it to the warehouse, I'd also get. So I'd basically be selling my crop twice, which obviously, again, in the spirit of fair play and fairness, can't happen. So we are not allowed as FMs to fulfill customs contracts on our servers. We can go do it on another server because, again, we're not an FM there. And we, in essence, then act as a contractor where we're just jumping in, we join the FSN farm, and we move the goods to the nearest sell point. So that gives you, a good overview of where we're at. I'm going to jump over to my house. So we're back here on the map. So the other thing I think, I mentioned, we're ready to harvest with our canola. So that will be the next episode. It may still start and possibly end today. Likely it won't end today, because I think harvesting all these fields at this point takes about 10 hours. Just depends a little bit on how well I drive, how much I'm paying attention. Sometimes, you put it on cruise going down one of the rows, and then suddenly you get distracted doing something else, and your harvester's in a ditch and you're spending an hour getting it out. I've never had to run and get the telehandler to do that, but certainly I've seen some pretty bad disasters on maps that have big ravines and so forth. And we do have some of those rivers near the edge. 3-4 years ago, me and 2 other FMs spent the better part of an hour trying to get a truck out of the river that a contractor had driven over there. Got it out, but it took a bit. And you are able to reset equipment if you need to, just like you can on anything you own. But operations will see equipment resets, and if there's a lot on a server, they start asking some questions, because they start to wonder, are people really following the rules in general? Because contractors are still also, obligated to not behave recklessly. I mean, we're supposed to follow the rules of the road as we drive, and, to allow people to pass and so forth as we're going along. So you can't cut through fields. Therefore, you shouldn't be getting into a situation too often where your equipment is unable to be rescued. And frankly, a lot of us just enjoy, once again, the realism of it. If a truck had rolled into the river in real life, you can't just hit a button and reset it back to the shop and go get it. Like, you've got to figure out how you're going to get it out. And so sometimes it just becomes a puzzle. And you'll find farm managers working together to do that. And a lot of times, we'll all bring our heavy equipment, like in my case quad track, and start pushing and so forth, because there aren't any towing chains or anything available in FSN as well. So that's a pretty long wrap up here, but it gives you a lot of additional information about FSN. I know people are trying to learn and understand what this is. Sometimes they'll come across things and hear about it, but then not necessarily have some information available. So that's part of why I've chosen to share this with folks, is gives you a glimpse into what you can do here, and what typical days are like. So you will start seeing a lot of activity. Obviously, again, it's just early summer. In my case here, because I had most of my fields planted, there wasn't a lot of spring activity. Some years I am, just like regular farms, planting heavily and fertilizing and liming all of these fields at once. But because I planted these in the autumn and they're basically, a winter crop and stayed in the ground, we didn't have that work going on. But now what likely will happen is we're going to have a harvest and then determine what's going on in these fields, and get those in the ground as well, so that we're ready to go. Or I may choose to let them sit, just depending on what my real life schedule looks like. So those are, again, the decisions I need to make as a farm manager within FSN, knowing how long things take. Certainly harvest and planting are some of the longer things, just because of the speed of the implements. So even though I've got a pretty wide header, I've got a 45-foot header. There's 60-foot headers available in our options for FSN. I simply choose to use the one I have here because I don't need a header trailer. The wheels and the trailer mechanism are integrated into this header. It's a draper header. And so once I connect that to my harvester, I can fold those wheels up and that arm extension, the towing extension, and I'm done. And same thing wherever I'm at a field, I can just drop it down. I don't have to sit there and try to position it on a header, hope it doesn't fall off as I'm transporting it, so forth and so on. So I'm comfortable losing the 15 feet of operating width for that. It adds a little bit of time, but not enough that I've found it worthwhile. Plus the 60-foot header is quite a bit of a premium. I don't think it's double what a 45-foot is, but it's probably 50 or 60% more, and you're only getting 33% more width. So you're definitely, in my mind, overpaying for what you're getting. So as I said, I tend to run slightly smaller equipment than some people might, because there's still a lot of people, just like in Farming Simulator in FSN, they just like to run the big stuff. I like to do what I can with reasonable sized equipment that I think would really be something that a farmer on a farm like this would use. If I was on Wild West or Midwest Horizons or some of those larger maps with large fields, that might make more sense. But I'm on this map because I like the smaller field sizes. I like the fact that they're not all rectangular, so forth and so on. So that's all I've got for now. This episode's certainly going to be long enough, even with the time lapse. So I'm going to wrap up, and next episode, look forward to getting this canola off our fields. Thanks. Talk to you later.